survived our 2 weeks off for our happy summer break. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Green Rush Live, our regularly scheduled Business of Cannabis talk show every Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern here on the Pro Cannabis Media Network. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. So happy to welcome in a friend from the Boston area. His name is Chris Faraone. He publishes is it a weekly newsletter, Talking Joints Memo there, Chris?
The newsletter comes out every week, and then but we have content up every day on the site.
There you go. So that is Chris. He is definitely more of a journalist, storyteller than I am. I am not afraid to admit that. I am a talk show host, and Chris is someone who actually waves the flag for the importance of independent journalism with Dig Boston. Correct, Chris?
Well, just Talking Joints Memo now, but I was with the Dig forever, and the Phoenix before that. I'm the alternative news guy, and alternative news is always covered. Before certain people took the word alternative, but basically it's always stuff that hasn't been covered. Cannabis always fell into that category. So before I was doing it full time, I always had one foot in the world.
Yeah, and by the way, one of the things as I teach young people in the college environment, college community around the Boston area, I always make the distinction that there is a distinction and a difference between a talk show host and a journalist. Now, a talk show host could have been a journalist at one point in his or her career, but there is a difference between someone who is giving you just the facts as opposed to someone who's giving you their opinions, i.e. a talk show host. And here is our journalist, Chris Faraone. And the first thing I want to ask you about is, we were both privy and witness to the reenactment of the Boston Tea Party by the MSO MariMed this past week, where they donned colonial outfits and dumped boxes that were labeled with the word weed, but weren't exactly weed, but it was the thought that counted. And more importantly, it was environmentally correct. So, Chris, my question is, you covered that. I saw that it was picked up by the Cannabis Business Times too, I'm pretty sure. But were you surprised that the biggest media group in Boston, the Boston Globe, was not there?
I don't know. Well, first of all, I have opinions too. Don't forget. I'm like kind of. We play it straight, but I don't really believe in objective journalism. It's all subjective down to what we cover, right?
Right.
So, whether the Globe's there or not, that's the most that's the big decision in the first place. Right now, I'm not going to say shame on anyone if they don't cover something like this. It really was. I thought it was an interesting event because, raised an issue. It's more of a national issue, 280E. Listen, there are a lot of other things I would shame major media for not covering before that. With that said, I'm surprised every television outlet wasn't there because it really was, it was a great spectacle. And, that's why we were there. I think, it had everything. It had an issue. It had great visuals, some great video if you were looking for it. But I will say, Jimmy, as usual, I try to look for, I always pretend that everybody's covering it and look for something a little different angle. And it's a little blip in my story, but I thought it was really interesting that, they're protesting a very specific part of prohibition related to taxes. But meanwhile, the event itself was moved around all morning because nobody wanted a cannabis related event, that with the Boston Tea Party Museum. And I'm not blaming these entities. I didn't even name the Boston Tea Party Museum in my piece because I'm not trying to start a war here. But my point is that I get it. They have these, there's federal waters, there's this and that to worry about. It's just all this nonsense that continues. So, there was kind of this subplot. They're there dressed in the garb, but the truth was the event didn't go on the way it was supposed to, not because of the host's fault, not because of MariMed's fault, but because of just this, this stew of ridiculous federal regulation. So I think that, it was staged, obviously, and they got accomplished what they wanted to, but there was also this little other kind of, icing on the cake that came through.
Right. And that was and I put it in my story that it was the New England Aquarium where the boat, I think, was it called the Lucky Star, the schooner? I think it was.
Something like that. But yeah, that was also the at the end, nobody wanted any cannabis stuff in the background. Right. Yeah. It was, so this, it kind of went on all day. It was the irony of ironies, right?
That's right. And yet they still pulled it off. Adapt and
Yeah.
improvise is the key for everything. I thought they did it. Howard Schachter, who was the brains behind this, I'll be perfectly honest, the communications director at MariMed, I thought it was a great idea because, I'm a history guy. I was a history major in college. And the last time the Boston Tea Party happened, I was not around in the 18th century. And I'm guessing you weren't either, Chris, right?
It's a go big or go home thing. So I think, they get definitely a win on that front.
So let me ask you a question. They're dumping tea in the harbor. You and I both know in the 18th century that hemp was it was flowing, right? I'm not quite sure how many hemp farms.
I was looking, and it turns out, from my research, the tea was tea dumped in the harbor, though a lot of it was green tea, which is what a lot of them were drinking at the time. So.
But do you think there was any, I don't know, hemp derivatives back in the 18th century that might have been used back then? Not that anybody covered it or made notes on it, but it was a party, wasn't it?
I'm pretty. Listen, man, it's been around. I don't know. I think I got to do my homework. And we love those kind of history pieces. Any history reporters out there want to look into our region's earliest history with the plant? I'm totally down.
That's right. And the other thing that I give them a lot of credit for, you and I both were dressed, I don't know, appropriately for a 100-degree day, 95-degree day. And they're out there in multiple layers of colonial costumes. And they were schwitzing is the best word to describe it. I mean, I give them a lot of credit. All the C-level executives were there for MariMed. I think there were quite a few spouses and friends and workers there as well. I really enjoyed the afternoon, even though it took me an hour and 45 minutes to get back from Boston to my world headquarters out here in the middle of nowhere in Clinton, Massachusetts.
I also want to say, they were talking about really taxation without representation at the federal level.
Right.
And then today, and I think I added it at the end of our piece.
Yep.
Today, yesterday's Cannabis Control Commission meeting was about the local level, host community agreements, and basically cities and towns having to actually say, this is how this is the impact that your impact fee is going towards. So it's the same issue, local. We've heard the same refrain, no taxation without representation, at hearings, at Cannabis Control Commission events. So I think, while they were really, hitting at the federal issue, it's just a recurring theme over and over, state level, even down to the municipal level.
And yet, one thing I did learn was that there are 14 states, including Massachusetts, that does allow local cannabis businesses to they can write off regular business expenses, which is what 280E clause is all about, on the state level, not the federal level, but on the state level, they do get a little bit of a break. And there's 14 states out there. New Jersey, I know, is one of them. I'm pretty sure New York is one. There's a few others as well. And as we go through the next few hours, we're bringing in a lot of our news correspondents from all over the country to talk about what's going on in their state now and what the future might bring. But were you surprised? I'll be perfectly honest.
And how much fun it is to do two sets of taxes, which I'm not sure of the legality of that in the first place. I think you better have an accountant on to talk about that, although I will certainly read up on it. But ultimately, deductions are deductions and necessary, especially for, massive enterprises like the ones we're talking about. So it's
right.
Listen, there's a lot of relief that states can provide. The host community agreement changes that are now being proposed is one clear example. But when it really comes to taxes and the IRS and the big ones that matter and those big bills, really it's a non-starter at this point.
Right. And yet I believe it's unjust. I think it's another reason the vilification and the stigma of this industry. And now here we are a few years into the legal world in Massachusetts. I think we're on our 5th year, 2018 November, so we can round up to November at this point, even though it's July, right? That it's been around for 5 years now. Is normalization happening, or are both sides still digging in their heels and saying, not in my backyard?
Yeah, I think normalization, we were just talking before about how the stories that the media still likes to report, how much money is made, And it's really a love-hate relationship where it's almost like cannabis has been accepted, except when they want to, when there's a sensational story to report, or if like one person does something stupid, and consumes and drives and hits somebody, and they still love the token story. So I'd say, listen, I'm not someone who really cares that much. I'm also, able-bodied white male, so I get around okay. So there are certainly people and communities that need more normalization more than I do, and certainly we are reporting on those communities. But really, I think I don't really care that much about how far behind people are. I'm more concerned about how far behind lawmakers are. Are they following the CCC? Are they going to actually understand all the proposals that come forward for social consumption, for example? Or are they going to say, nah, this is completely unnecessary. We just have our baz and whatever. I don't know. So I think the education level, let's get lawmakers on reading first, and then we can go with the public. Although I will say our traffic, our readership is, a lot of consumers, not, it's not necessarily a B2B readership, people in the public who are interested in what's going to happen with lounges, with things like that.
Yep.
Maybe not host community agreements as much, although of course, the less taxes, the less fees, the cheaper weed will be. Not that cannabis could get any cheaper in the Bay State. It fell to about a little like $5.87 a gram in June. So
That's right. And let's talk about June, because again, I think you reported that it was the seventh most weed sold in a month in June last month, correct?
yeah, well, I want to give props to the Cannabis Business Times, which is the one. I'm not here to really turd on all these other outlets, but when I saw that it was the best month, I was a little surprised. So I started looking back, and of course, once something is reported, it just gets repeated and repeated and repeated. So I did go and I found 1 or 2 months that had been slightly higher. This really isn't a big deal. It's one of those things, but it does go to show that with cannabis media, one thing, for me, the repetition, the aggregation without fact checking, that's a little bothersome, but also just like,
Uh-oh. We lose
always,
them?
can you
Oh,
hear
there
me
you
okay?
are. Yeah, now I can. Yeah.
Always so impressed by the money that that's what gets reported. It's like all this money was made, but the real story is, that pie is being split between a lot more companies. A lot of companies are going out of business. Others are facing absolute, a catastrophe. So it's not just, when you put in a headline record sales, yeah, it's bad enough that they weren't really record sales. It's also the other issue is really that, that's not the big picture.
It isn't just sale. Just because a sale is made does not equal to either profit. And that to me is very important, because I'm pretty sure it may have been Kirk Dalton and cannabis.net. I don't know. It was Bo Whitney posted 24% of cannabis companies, of the only 24%, are actually profitable. Okay, so the people out there who, again, have this notion that, oh, you're in the weed business, you're making millions of dollars. BS, people. That's not true. In fact, they're working extremely hard just to figure out how they can actually break even. And that's a goal of a lot of these companies, because of those host community agreements, because of the taxation, because of the federal versus state. I mean, there's so many regulations and issues that challenge the people that are in this business and industry
Yeah.
today.
And the irony, and I can't even go, I want to spend all day on it, but it's like,
Oh, yes.
as somebody who's covered a lot of industries in this state and covered environmental issues, covered polluters, it's disgusting how Massachusetts goes out of its way, bends over backwards to recruit companies that are despicable, like GE. Boston, you should see, they rolled out the red carpet, spent, bringing people out to dinners, tax incentive packages, promises that were literally never delivered. If we're talking in the case of GE, look at Lego, a little bit better of a company, but they got invited here. Cannabis companies, it's unbelievable. It's hand in their pockets. It's the opposite. All of these liars in government who say, they support small business, that they don't support anything. They are absolute. They're greedy bastards. And the other thing is the Massachusetts Municipal Association, which fights on behalf of these cities and towns, and which we keep hearing from the CCC that their ideas are being considered. that's a bullshit organization. They use taxpayer money, which, as far as I'm concerned, shouldn't be the case. It's taxpayer money through municipalities that are members of that organization, and then they fight against things like transparency. They're the people who are always fighting over Freedom of Information Act requests, policies affecting FOIA. So, it's just the whole thing is just, listen, I understand that cities and towns shouldn't be walked all over either. That's another story. Some of them are going to be small places dealing, going against, big attorneys maybe, and sure, they should be protected. I get that. But it's certainly, it's gone the other way. It's absolutely abusive. And hey, now they got caught. There were big cases. There's the case of the former mayor of Fall River. So, it's over. Whoever, if you got the money, props to Boston. I know they can afford it, but they gave money back and stopped collecting those fees. And you're going to see a lot of other places that I think will fall in line with that. So long as they're getting their taxes, they don't need to, get all this other stuff.
And once again, I think it was the fear of this drug becoming legal and the stigma that's still attached to it, that a lot of these towns, they did not do research or look at any of the science or any other examples of states that have gone through the same thing Massachusetts had went through 5 years ago, as an example, to find out, well, is it really, are we really going to have lines, around the block for months and months, if not years and years? No, the novelty is worn off. It's just another business, and it's the most vilified new industry that has driven billions of dollars into the economy one way or another that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it's the injustices that really gets my gets my blood boiling a little bit, and I get very, very passionate about it. I do want to ask you about the group of entities in the Bay State that I believe it's called the Cannabis Business Association or something. There's not a lot of collaboration amongst the competitive nature of the retail world of cannabis right now. There is definitely a dog eats dog environment of competition, not collaboration, of this new industry in the state. Am I right?
Of course, but you do have your alignments of companies that sell in other companies' stores. It's certainly, if you have a product to sell, if you're wholesaling and you also have a retail situation, you have a lot of, not necessarily trade like barter, but trade in the, in the sense of you're doing business with them, they're doing business with you. But yeah, it's cutthroat, it's competition. If I am a capitalist, I'm not a very good one. I'm probably more socialist minded, but I don't, at the same time, I'm not over here going, this is not, I understand this is how it is. And it's absolutely cutthroat out there. One thing I'm happy to see is a little bit more creativity rather than just dispensaries being thrown up and resembling the dispensary down the street. You are, getting some, unique things. I visited a Greatest Hits dispensary in Taunton a couple of weeks ago. It's set up like a concert venue, something like primitive. You got New Dia opening by Fenway Park, which it's kind of set up like a Macy's almost. There's where there's the Ralph Lauren department, the Guess Jeans department. Here, there's a Green Carrot Collective corner with your cookies. Then there's the Nimbus area and so on. I think they have like 8 different brands in there, or 8 different companies that have multiple brands.
Right.
So I love seeing some. There's a bakery coming to Roslindale. Just like imagine like a small corner bakery that'll have some cool, unique baked goods. I'm all about finding those, those unique products that aren't all over the place. Whenever I go into a dispensary and say I drive an hour into the middle of the state, walk in, I'm not going to get a product that I've seen elsewhere. I'm going to find something new, and hopefully, that's what Talking Joints Memo is all about. We write about a ton of products in addition to all the politics, and that, because that's, people are out for that too. There's like more than 1,500 edible SKUs, for example, on the market. People want to know, what are they going to spend their money on? So we're here for it.
And I call them destination dispensaries, similar to what you're talking about. Reason to go and check out the interior. Okay, and I'm going to give a shameful plug to Campfire Dispensary in West Boylston. I'm pretty sure it's on, I want to say Route 140, but I'm still kind of new to this area. But Campfire Dispensary in West Boylston is set up like they have campers inside, and they have, your cookouts, and you have your camp.
Really?
Yeah, no, it is
I gotta check it out.
I want you to check it out because I know
love it.
when you walk in, you're going to have the same reaction I did. I went, wow, this is really cool. You talk about creativity. You mentioned greatest hits, 100% similar kind of a thing. What is the theme inside? And I'll give CNA stores in Amesbury.
I love CNA is unbelievable. CNA is awesome. I know they're one of your spots. Definitely had a good time up there. And don't forget, another thing CNA has that also Bodega has and some other places have is they get is a deli style flour.
Right.
So, and at CNA, the one I went to, was that up in Haverhill,
Yep.
Or Ames,
Yeah.
Haverhill, they really a huge bar and there's somebody back there and you can just pick whatever you want, get a couple different kinds, make a salad, as we used to say. Definitely a good place. And that's one of my favorite parts of this is going around, seeing what's up, talking to owners and seeing what works. And I think you'll see other places, kind of change it up, get a little bit more creative with it, do some specialties. I know Native Son has like more than 100 beverages, and obviously that has to do with their size.
Right.
And then I'm gonna head up there. We definitely love writing about beverages, especially in the summer. And then also, you got Blue River in Cambridge is a real dab destination. This, almost they're all about the terps over there. Really fantastic stuff. Specialty shop for sure. So yeah, that's
I want to go back to social clubs and social consumption because this lends itself exactly to what we're talking about here. Have you been to 33 Dunster Street, which used to be a hang of mine back in the 70s and 80s before it became John Harvard's brew pub? It's now called Diaspora, and it's a private social club. Am I accurate? In Cambridge?
No.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
Oh, I know it's 420, so you're getting enjoy. By the way, pass it over to me. No, I'm only kidding. You can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there a few times. Great time, really fully safe and actually not as smoky as you would think for a basement place. It is pretty big, even though it's downstairs.
Right.
Great spot, music. They have a bar. I think we'll always remember these times as there've always been weed parties. Certainly, you got old entity like Unregular Radio where I used to hang out was like a 24/7 cannabis party with, and then but there's always been stuff and mass cam related stuff. Of course, props to Summit Lounge, which will definitely go down as the trendsetter, the one that really I think gave a lot of people just the idea that they can do this. But I think this is going to be another one. This is in Cambridge, right in the heart of Harvard Square, and as those of us who know Harvard Square know that in reality it's not as cool as people think it is. There's some great bars there, but it's mostly just banks and fucking college students, right? But excuse me.
When I was a kid, okay, we used to go to Harvard Square and just hang out. And the Coop used to have great $2 sidewalk record sales on a Saturday afternoon for $2. I got Morrison Hotel by the Doors, which is, by the way, one of the greatest rock albums of all time. You agree? I'm dating.
I don't listen to rock music, but
oh man, don't tell me that you're a country guy, please don't.
No,
Okay,
I'm sitting in front of multiple Wu-Tang albums that I wrote the liner notes for the group. I'm a hip hop guy.
All right. Hey, let me ask. Wait, let's give a plug for Talking Joints Memo. If people want to sign up for your newsletter, where do they go?
Just go to talkingjointsmemo.com. There's top of it, bottom of it, the signups all over the place. Definitely do it. We don't spam you. Every now and then we have a midweek one called TJM2, which is more long form, like a really in-depth interview. We do a lot of scientists and stuff like that. Really not necessarily brand driven, but idea driven. And other than that, the one that comes out on Friday, it's really a link to the stories that cover all the areas, a local story, the big state story, a national story, a medical story. We do one story usually on one of the neighboring states, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island. So, we,
Interesting note about New Hampshire that made our We Talk news this week, that they are now taking medical cards from outside other states and Canada. So there are a few medical dispensaries in New Hampshire that you can now go to. If you have your medical card, they will honor it and allow you entrance and the ability to buy in New Hampshire. Why you would buy in New Hampshire as opposed to other places around that may have, I don't know, better.
It's promising. And and of course, that's the second, there's a much bigger headline coming out of New Hampshire, which is that Governor Sununu, after failed attempts through the legislature to get recreational cannabis in New Hampshire, the governor said, well, we can do it, but it has to be done my way, like the state liquor stores. So now there is basically they are studying that, and the next legislative session, there will probably be a proposal that will have a good chance of passing, since the governor won't veto it. But
Right.
also in New Hampshire, your watchers and your viewers should know that the real issue is a total war on home grow. They refuse, there's the live free or die state where you can drive a motorcycle without wearing a helmet. You
Yeah.
are not allowed to grow a single plant of cannabis, even if you're a medical patient. And it's so bad that the activists there are temporarily, I'm pretty sure the case is that they're really just looking to get this for medical patients now. The idea of everybody being able to grow isn't even on the table. So really, it's that dire. The governor, it turns out Sununu is not running for president. It does not look like it. So
Good.
well, that's why people thought he was kind of doing this because, of course, New Hampshire's the island, the only state in New England without an adult use program. But so this is his way. But I guess he's not trying to ingratiate himself with anyone. He's just trying to be a big old, bossy baby and saying that. And by the way, for the record, I don't know if it was just a bad coincidence. I waited in line at a state liquor store in New Hampshire a couple months ago for like 40 minutes. Absolutely insane. And here I am, like I said, the bad capitalist, but still, I'm a capitalist when it comes to having enough liquor stores. I don't have to wait more than 5 minutes in line. Absolutely crazy. I just don't see how they're going to do it. Of course, there are nuances because the medicals that are there already, will they be able to turn into? So we don't know how it's actually going to look, but New Hampshire is an interesting front for sure.
It always is. Hey, you're an interesting front too, Chris, in your own right. I really do enjoy chit-chatting with you. You've been a great addition to our lineup on a regular basis. I really want to thank you and push everybody to subscribe to the Talking Joints Memo, because it really is one of the most in-depth and accurate reporting of the cannabis scene in the greater Boston area. And being local is something you pride yourself on, because every time I bring up something that isn't related to Boston, you always bring it back to the hood.
I'm interested in stuff. For us, it's kind of like, we've done a lot of media stuff before. I'm not, no, not really here to get rich. Like to pay the bills. But the truth is that I think a lot of people, when they get into cannabis media, I mean, you have a network going, but I think a lot of people, even when they're just starting like a blog,
Right.
their hopes are that we'll be able to attract advertising from all over the place. For us, just zero in, and not to mention there's just so much still happening in Massachusetts. It would be, it's impossible. I would have a FOMO and a panic attack every day if I had to think about what was also going on in 5 other states. So
there you go. Well, Chris Faraone, great to see you this week at the Boston Tea Party, 21st century style, and always a pleasure to have you on Green Rush Live. Thank you so much. And we will take our break now and come back with more of the staff of Weed Talk News. It's going to be kind of like a free-for-all over the next hour and a half. If you ever have seen Weed Talk News, which follows this program at 6 p.m. really live, you'll enjoy seeing some of the reporters and correspondents that we have from coast to coast. So for now, we're going to take a break. Chris Faraone, thank you so much. We'll be back with more of Green Rush Live after this.